Good afternoon. My name is David Brandt, a Principal Program Manager for Office 365. I live in Denver, Colorado, but I work for the product team based out of Seattle and Redmond. Welcome everybody to Ignite in Chicago. How's it going so far? The fact that all of you made it in this room and there's almost no seats left is amazing, and I congratulate you. We do have some seats up front, so for those in the back that are looking for a place, there's plenty of places. Plus, you'll be in t-shirt range. Those in the back will not be in t-shirt range, so, okay. We're going to talk today about identity management is easy in Office 365. We're going to go through the whole realm of identity management from your on-premises environment and how it applies to working with Office 365. Our agenda, we'll go a little over some terminology. We'll talk about the different models and different modes of accessing identity management through Office 365. Cloud identity, synchronized identity model, federated, and we'll talk about some new identity features that are being implemented as we speak and on the way. So introducing the Office 365 identity models, we have on the left-hand side here, we have the Office 365 Cloud Identity. And this is really for the customer that wants to make things very easy. It's great for trials, great for demos, great for small businesses, people that don't have the on-premises infrastructure for Active Directory and would like to have Office 365 services. So by using this, it really requires 0 on-premises servers. That is our cloud identity. We'll go in more depth than that. Office 365 synchronized identity. That is where we do have an on-premises Active Directory environment, synchronizing the users and password sync up to the cloud into Azure Active Directory. And this does require on-premises identity servers. That's if you have Active Directory already installed. This is the scenario for keeping those in sync. We'll go into depth on that as well. And then federation. So with federation, we're actually taking the on-premises identity management solution that you have. Could be Active Directory on service. Could also be other directory implementations that might be there. But we're federating the service. So as the user signs in to Office 365, they're then being authenticated at the local on-premises server. We'll talk about that as we move through. But these are the 3 models that we focus on for our solutions. And between these 3 models, we can get from the small business customer all the way up to the largest enterprise customers that we have. So if we look at how this works in the scenarios of a user, we have a user, Bob, and Bob's trying to get access to the different services, whether it's SharePoint Online, Exchange, Lync, all the different things that are online with Office 365. Bob's not aware of how this all works, but you as an IT administrator in the background understands that to do that, the user will just do their sign-in, and based upon how it's been set up for you, you'll have different types of authentication and different paths for that authentication. So as a signs in for like SharePoint Online or Exchange Online, we're actually doing the authentication through Microsoft Azure Active Directory. That's what we use out in the cloud. We use it for Office 365. We use it for a lot of other third-party applications. We also use it for lots of things for Microsoft Azure as well. Your own custom-built applications can leverage Azure Active Directory. With Azure Active Directory, you have several different ways of getting information and querying the directory through metadata or also through Graph API. And we have different interoperability endpoints too as well for things like WS Federation, WS Trust, Shibboleth, and SAML. And those are for third-party identity management connectors that you want to do federation with Active Directory. Now, in the scenario of synchronization, when Bob signs in and gets access to SharePoint Online, we query Microsoft Azure Active Directory. His account has already been there because we've synchronized the account up into Azure Active Directory. And in some cases, we may have also synchronized the password hash So Bob automatically then would get access to the services based out of Azure Active Directory. Now, if we have federation in play here, when Bob signs in, Azure Active Directory will look at the domain name, the .com name at the end, and decide which way to send that authentication. Can it do it in Azure Active Directory? Or is it redirected back to the on-premises environment for federated sign-in through ADFS or another third party? And then the authentication takes place there. And that's how Bob gets access to the different services that we have. Now we're going to go into deep dive into each one of these scenarios as we get moving through here. But it's very important to understand just kind of how the flow works for a user in these identity models. So let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about the cloud identity model. So cloud identity model, this is for the user that doesn't have local Active Directory, doesn't have a local login, and it's managed through portal.office.com. And the user is just signing into Office 365, and that authentication takes place in Azure Active Directory. You as the administrator can also see that these users, when they sign in, and you're managed here in the admin center, you can actually see on the far right-hand side, you can see the status of those users. It says in cloud, so that means that that user is managed in the cloud and not on the local Active Directory. On this screen, you can also see that we have not set up synchronization or single sign-on. Those are all the different areas that you can set up that interoperability. But for right now, for a cloud identity, no need to be doing that. If we drill into a user, we see the same user objects and attributes that we would normally see in Azure Active Directory for users. Okay? When we talk about synchronized identity models, this is where it gets a little bit more in-depth and a little bit more flexible as well. Now our user is signing into Office 365, and we, as the administrator, have set up something called synchronization through various modes. How many people are familiar with DirSync? Okay, lots of people familiar with DirSync. Okay, how about Azure AD Sync? Okay, a few less hands. Okay. And how about AD Connect? Anybody hear about AD Connect? Oh, okay, good. So a few, but we've got some good information for you coming up on that as well. This is really focusing on current day DirSync and also Azure AD Sync. And this is a scenario where we have turned synchronization on. So from the on-premises Active Directory, we are taking the user and the attributes, and we're copying up to Azure Active Directory in the cloud. And if we turn on password sync, we actually take the password hashes from the local password and put it up into the cloud for what we call same sign-on, not single sign-on, because you still need to sign in. But the nice thing about that is when the user is accessing Office 365, they enter their username and their password is there, and bingo, they get logged into the system. Once again, we're taking this information from the on-premises Active Directory and moving it up. Fairly simplified model in that case. Let's talk a little bit about password hash sync and the security. We always get questions about this, specifically when we start introducing password synchronization. We're actually taking the on-premises Active Directory information, and it's really a hash. It's not the actual password itself. It's been put into an algorithm, and then we take that algorithm out into what's called a digest, and then we move that up to the cloud using another encryption capability called SHA or SHA-256 algorithm. And that connection to the cloud that we take that path up to take that hash up is SSL encrypted in cloud. So there's really no way to backwards find out what the actual password is. Microsoft does not know the password. All we have is that object in the cloud, the digest, and that's all that we're working with. So it's very important to understand that when you're talking about enabling this with a customer or your own security environment, that they understand the path that this goes through. So this enables Azure Active Directory to validate the user's password when they log in. Once again, this is something called same sign-in. Okay. When choosing between sync tools, very important. DirSync today. This is something that we still have out there. It's still available, still supportable. Currently linked from the Office 365 admin portal. There's really no features that we have in this that we don't have also in Azure AD Sync, which you'll see here on the right. And we will remain supporting this through our normal support policy. But going forward, and a lot of people have already started using Azure AD Sync, and this is a little bit more powerful tool than just the normal DirSync. This includes the capability of syncing from multiple forests, including merging duplicate users into these forests. So if I've got an environment where I have multiple Exchange or multiple Active Directory environments, I can actually move them up to the same tenant or the same Office 365 configuration. That's something that's new with Azure AD Sync. And we have some things that are coming soon with that, with being able to sync other LDAP version 3 capable directories, very popular in the education and also the government environments. And so that is coming up soon. We also have the ability to do selective OU sync inside the UX instead of using the command line tools in PowerShell. So making it much easier for selecting which users you want to be able to sync up to the cloud as well. It also enables selective attribute sync. So you now have the capability of selecting attributes on user objects that you want to have synced up to the cloud. Not everybody wants to have all of the objects that are and attributes that are available synced up to Microsoft's Azure Active Directory. We'll go through that here in a second. So these are very important things to understand about Azure AD Sync. This is our current recommended tool that we use. Coming soon and also in preview right now, which means you can actually go download it and work with it. I would do a trial tenant and work with that. But it's actually Azure AD Connect, and this deploys Azure AD Sync along with and optionally Active Directory Federation services. How many people have set up ADFS in the past? How many people had a hard time setting up ADFS in the past? I saw about 5 hands go up. Come on, I had a hard time with it. Okay, so very important. We're going to make this a lot easier for you to set up. It also includes a superset of the Azure AD. And once again, I mentioned this is in preview now, and I'm actually going to demonstrate that in a little bit. So going forward, we really want to speak a lot about Azure AD Connect. So if we look at the environment that we have other identity stores. It could be some type of database, SQL logins, those types of things. LDAP directories, Active Directory, of course, all bridging through AD Connect. That's setting up the AD Sync and also the single sign-on scenarios as we go through, and also the same sign-on. So if we look at that, that is our bridge to Office 365, not only our custom apps, but also all the third-party applications that are available out there that are now consuming Azure Active Directory and working with Office 365. You can see those listed on the side here. So very important that Azure AD Connect is going to be your best way going forward. So there's a couple of things. There's some flexibility with Azure AD Connect. And with Azure AD Connect, there's a couple settings in here that I'm going to demonstrate. First is the Express settings. And the most important part about this front end is there's just one tool to go to. You don't have to set these all up, download them separately. You don't have to do all the prerequisites separately. It all gets it going for you. So essentially, you can get up and running in about 4 clicks with the Express settings, which I'm going to demonstrate. And then you can start there and then scale up or add other options. You can go back and make modifications, and we'll show you that as well. There's a lot of custom options, as I'll show you here in a second, that you can go through and adjust to the more complex scenarios. So with that, I think we're actually going to set up and do a little demo here. Oh, very good. Okay. So right now, this is what the front end looks like to Azure Active Directory Connect. Everybody say it okay, fine? All right, so this is the welcome screen. just a general overview of what it's going to walk you through. You have a simple guide. It's going to tell you about installing the identity synchronization and the other components required. And it will also verify the integration of the on-premise and online directories. In other words, we're actually going to log in and get set up for all those. So once I select agree to the license terms and policy, I have a chance to move forward. Now the prerequisites here are all things that we've had to install separately in the past. So you have the Microsoft Online Services Sign-In Assistant for IT professionals, Windows Azure Active Directory module for Windows PowerShell, and also Microsoft Visual C++ redistributable package. These will all be installed if they're not currently installed on that machine. And since I've got a good fast machine here, it's going through and checking that out for me, getting the installations up. All right, so at this step, we're now going to install the sync services. Once again, we're talking about Azure AD Sync that it's going to do the installation for. We have either I can just go ahead and click install, or I can come in here and do some optional configurations. I have the opportunity to insert a different SQL Server name and the instance, should I want to have my configuration set up for running off of SQL Server. If I don't, it just installs the runtimes locally and runs from there. I can also set up different service accounts to run under. I can set up the different permissions for the groups. And if I had a file here that I already had these configured out for, I can actually import those settings from the file and bring it in and run that way. So in this case, though, we're just doing the express install. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit the install. And right now, what's happening is it's prompted me to connect to Azure Active Directory. So I am going to do that. In this case, I am connecting to Contoso. There's my first typo right there, contoso.onmicrosoft.com. That's my initial domain name that I have there. And it connected and went on to the next step. So I was able to actually authenticate into Azure Active Directory for my account, and it's now connected to that part. Now, once again, these are the express settings here. If you have a single Windows Server Active Directory for us, we will do the following. So once again, I connected to my Azure Active Directory environment of Contoso. It's going to automatically configure the password synchronization from on-premises Active Directory to Azure AD. It's also going to start the initial synchronization, and then it's also going to synchronize all the different attributes that are set in there by default. If I'd like different settings, I'll click Customize. So just a preview here. I can come in here and I can change how I want to do password synchronization, or with Federation with ADFS, and it walks through all the things that it's going to do at that point. And then whether I want to just fully not configure the user sign-in portions of this. But for right now, for this demonstration, we're focusing on password synchronization for that. Okay, so once again, I'm connected to Azure Active Directory, but now I want to connect also to my local Active Directory. So enter my password, and I'll come in as administrator. Of course. There we go, bingo. Notice here what I can do is I can also add multiple directories if I wanted to. So if I had two local environments that I wanted to connect up to my Office 365 and Azure Active Directory implementation, I would be able to do that at that time. So right now I've got contoso.com, Active Directory is there. I can also do sync filtering at this point here if I wanted to. And with this, I can actually come in and synchronize all users and devices. Identify users on on-premises directories. Users are represented only once across all directories. Users' identities exist across multiple directories with my options here. In this case, we're just doing this simple. Actually, what I've done is I've gone through the actual implementation here instead of the express, so we're just going to move forward. On Wednesday, I believe it is, Andreas is in the crowd, has a deep dive on Azure AD Connect, which he'll actually go through all these different settings and how to implement them in a large area. So anyways, I'm going to hit install here. We're now configuring, moving on, restarting, and bingo, we're now complete. So part of my demo, I went a little bit further deeper than I should have. I should have just connected on the Express. But anyways, you got the idea. Fairly easy to do. Didn't have to go install all the individual components. I only had to authenticate to Azure AD and to my local administrative account here in my local Active Directory environment, make a few choices, and move forward. At this point, we've already connected, and our synchronization up to the cloud is starting and will soon be available. Do we have questions on that? Anybody? Yes, sir. Can you speak up to the microphone, please?
I was asking, are you a domain admin when you, what was your
in this case, I was a domain admin, but we also have the ability to go down at lower levels for connections for Azure AD Sync as well. Would you like a t-shirt? Now there's more questions. So people are thinking, I didn't bring enough clothes for 5 days. Yes, sir.
Will Azure AD Connect be part of EMS, or is that going to be a separate product that you have to purchase?
It's not anything that you have to purchase. Azure AD Connect is our default tool that we'll be using in the future for all of this. Yeah, you don't have to purchase it. It comes with your subscriptions.
When's general availability expected?
Right now, it's in public preview. All I can say is soon. So, yeah. And that's worth it. And you're sitting up close. Congratulations. And last question for right now. Yes, sir.
So for the connection that happens on premises, what domain, how do you define what domain controller that it's connected to, and how does that eliminate or reduce the signal failure?
Yeah, the question is for the local connection, is there a way, what you really want to know, is there a way to define which domain controller you're connecting to for that, correct? For the authentication? Yeah. It is on the local site from what I understand. I'm not sure. Andreas, is there a way to connect even further deeper?
Yeah, you can specify which domain controller is involved.
There you go.
What if there's a physical problem with that one domain controller? Does your authentication and synchronization? By default, it will go to the default same such, but you can configure it if you want. Oh, so are you saying it's redundant within an Active Directory site?
Yep. Thank you. Fantastic. And that was a good one here. Look at that. Nice. Fantastic. Okay, so more advanced options in Azure AD Connect. Multiple forest topologies. Deploy a pilot using just a few users in a group, which is very good. So if you wanted to do a pilot using this, you could enable it that way. There is an option for don't start sync right away. So in other words, a staging mode. So you can go through and select your options and do your testing that way. You just do not do the actual sync. You can also configure sign-on using federation. Had I gone further deeper into the demo, which Andreas will be doing on Wednesday, you'd actually see all the abilities to turn on Active Directory Federation services and configure that as well. It also will support Azure Active Directory Premium features such as write back of passwords. So in that scenario, write back of passwords, if a cloud user who's now being synchronized then actually does a password change in the cloud, that will come back down into your local on-premises environment. Users and groups and devices from the cloud as well will then be written back to local Active Directory. And syncing custom directory attributes to the cloud as well. And I know that Andreas will be going through those. Once again, it's this Wednesday. In fact, plug his session right now. Okay, extending on-premises directories to the cloud made easy with Azure Active Directory Connect with Andreas. So that is Wednesday at 10:45. Be a great session to attend if you're interested in learning more deeper pieces of Active Directory Connect. Okay. Now back to our models. Let's get into the federated identity model. When we look at our federated identity model, this is a little bit more flexibility with how you do your authentication. Once again, our user here on the left is accessing information up in Office 365. Those accounts are up in Office 365 because we do implement Azure AD Sync, synchronizing the user accounts up to the cloud. So they're present in Azure Active Directory. But the important part is when the Office 365 application is logged into, when the user uses their .com or .edu address or whatever it is, we're evaluating how that authentication should take place for that user. In the federated identity model scenario, Office 365 presents that to Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory knows that this is a federated account and domain and knows that it needs to send that authentication request to the local on-premises Active Directory that's running Active Directory Federation services. So by doing that, the authentication takes place on premises. We get a token that's presented back up to Azure Active Directory, and then the authorization to use that application is then enabled, and Bob gets access to his Office 365 resources. Notice that we still use Azure AD Sync in there, because with Azure AD Sync, we're actually bringing those accounts up to Azure Active Directory, so it's available and usable. There's a reason why you might want to use password sync backup for federated sign-in. Now, we talked about password sync and using the hashes and bringing it back up for the synchronized model. But you can also use that in a federated sign-in scenario. Now, if you're in a situation where either your services for Active Directory services are down, or your site is down, or you're without power, or something like that, if you have the backup for federated sign-in enabled, then that password hash is available in Azure Active Directory, so Bob can get access to the application he needs to without being authenticated back down in your local on-premises directory. So it gives you an opportunity to have a little bit of fail-safe there. Now, it's still available to have multiple systems of Azure Active Directory. I'll get you there in a second. Federation services, you can also run them in a Azure instance on Azure as well. They don't have to be running locally, so there are ways to do redundant. But just in case, some customers do choose to enable sync backup for federated sign-in. Yes, sir, question?
Is there any way to make that an automatic switch over, so we have a certain number of failures and it'll automatically go to backup sync?
Question is there a way to make that an automatic failover? And I'm not aware of one at this point. No, it's a manual step. There is some time that it does take for that to actually go through and change. So you are going to have some downtime there because of the lack of federation services, but eventually Bob will be able to get access even if ADFS doesn't come back in. And then you, later on, will have to switch back over to federation to use that. So, here you go, sir. There we go. Saw one more question right here down the hall. Step up to the microphone if you don't mind.
Just adding to what he said, I'm curious, is there an impact to users through the client applications like Office?
Is there an impact to users? If they're trying to get access to those applications at the time they cannot authenticate due to ADFS being unavailable, yes, the user will not be able to sign in at that point.
But I mean, if you were to do failover and they've already authenticated, are they going to get booted out, or is there going to be an experience?
No, they won't really get booted out. They'll just do another re-authentication request on the back end, and Azure Active Directory will actually then have the password hash available and be able to authenticate the user at that point. So, last T-shirt. Come on up and get it. There you go. All right. Any other questions locally here on, one more back there. Yes, sir, or ma'am. Go ahead. Step up to the microphone.
So scenario, I have a single AD forest, but two separate tenants. What are my options? I can't use AAD sync in that scenario. Would
That's
AAD
correct.
Connect address any of that?
No, it does not address it at this time.
So FIM is my only option?
Andreas, are the other options there? I'm going to call on the.
So one single AAD sync instance? Okay, but then I should have two AAD sync instances?
Mhm.
But then I have a single AD for us, so how, okay. Somebody at Microsoft told me that multiple AAD sync instances in a single forest is not supported, but you're saying it's... Okay, great, thank you.
It gets tricky. As we all know. That's why we're here, right? Yeah.
How about the expert road?
I'm sorry?
If customer have the expert road connection to the cloud?
If they have what? I'm sorry? Express route. Yeah. Okay. I'm not familiar with the express route options. There's no difference that I'm aware of. Yep. Okay. A couple notes about Active Directory Federation services. Very important. Use trained and experienced deployment staff. When I was in consulting services, when we first introduced Active Directory Federation services, I worked for about a year just fixing what people were trying to do, right? So we've made it much easier since then, but make sure there are some decisions that have some long-term ramifications. Make sure you've got trained staff. Use the Azure AD Connect tool. Read the deployment guidance up on TechNet. And very simple, implement only the Office 365 requirements if that's what you're doing. The only certificate required is the SSL certificate for Azure Active Directory to come back down and look at your endpoint for your ADFS instance. And also make sure that you do your homework on the firewall update for permissions, making sure that you have access for those protocols to connect properly. Okay, so choosing identity models. Once again, we have the cloud identity, we have synchronized identity, and federated identity. So choosing is a whole nother step, making sure that you're making the right choices, what scenarios that you want to enable, and also understanding, can I move through there? So the first step of this is understanding, before we make that choice, if I choose one, what if my needs change? Can I change it? Well, here's the ways that you can change through this. So cloud identity to synchronized identity, very easy. Deploy DirSync, Azure AD Sync, Azure Active Directory Connect. We'll all do that synchronization for you at this point in time. And doing a hard match or soft match of the users, so you're making sure that we're getting the right matching of the user's user principal name or email name up to the cloud, matching up with that cloud user. That'd be the way to do that. Synchronized identity to federated identity. So you're essentially just adding Active Directory Federation services on top of it. You can leave password sync enabled as a backup, as we mentioned. So you can move from that synchronized identity environment to the federated if you need to have that enabled. Can you go from federated identity to synchronized? Absolutely. So there's a PowerShell command. As you see here, convert MS Online domain to standard. So that enables, disables the federation component and then back to synchronized identity. Takes 2 hours plus 1 additional hour per 2,000 users. So you do have some time. You want to plan that out. So it takes a little bit of time to make that switch. You can also go from synchronized identity to cloud identity. Customers can do that. I do that a lot of times in my demos and my trials and things like that as well, too. So, but that takes a little bit of time, 72 hours, and you can monitor with the PowerShell command MSO company information. It'll give you a status of that as well. So you have flexibility between these models. Make sure you understand how to do that if need be. And now, why would you choose each model? Choose the simplest model for your needs. This is our recommendation. Keep it very, very simple. Cloud Identity is the simplest model. If you've got a customer that does not have on-premises directory services and only wants to access Office 365, that is a great way to go forward. Use cloud when you have no on-premises directory, as I mentioned. Or in a scenario where there's on-premises directory restructuring going on, it's a great way to still get moving up in the cloud and getting things going. And also for your pilot. If you've got a pilot going, using the Cloud Identity model is the way to go for your Office 365 pilot. Choose Synchronize. If you have an on-premise directory, once again, password hash means federation is not required just to have the same password on the cloud. Once again, very clear. That is same sign-on, okay? Username and password is still the same in the cloud and on-premises. It's not single sign-on because you still are prompted for a password. Now, you can save credentials for later, but that's handled locally by your Windows Credential Manager. So if you just select a little box in there to save my password, that is something that's happening locally on your machine. So understanding the difference between same sign-on and single sign-on is a real key piece of information. And then choose password hash sync unless you have one of the scenarios that requires federation. And those scenarios for federation. If you've already got ADFS deployed and you're just doing upgrades locally, you want to enable and get more of the features in AD Sync. You want to get access to the latest tools that Microsoft has. You can still do your federation with that ADFS deployment. If you've got a third-party federated identity provider, there's third parties that make other authentication mechanisms that Office 365 will work with. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. That's another reason to stay federated. If you use Forefront Identity Manager for your local identity management capabilities in your environment, then that's going to require you using federation as well. More technical requirements. If you have on-premises integrated smart card or multi-factor authentication solution, so you've got something on-premises that is asking you and your users to enter a second factor of authentication, that is something that you need to be using authentication through federation services for. Or if you have a custom hybrid application or hybrid search is something that's required, then ADFS is going to also need to have be enabled for your environment. If you look at your policies, so this is your corporate security policies coming in play here. You require sign-in and audit or immediate disable. So if you think about this, immediate disable, you've dismissed somebody and they need to be taken out of the systems immediately. The fastest route is Active Directory Federation Services. A federated environment will enable that much faster. Single sign-on, minimizing prompts is required. So once again, you're just signing in once to the system and your local Active Directory environment is doing the authentication piece. So you're not signing in externally and then also getting prompted for internal resources at the same time. Single sign-on, once again, is different than same sign-on. And you have, another reason is different restrictions you might have by network locations. So either I can't sign in during this period at this location, or I can't have my users signing in between certain hours of the day. Maybe you've got some type of policy enabled for that as well. That is going to require Active Directory Federation Services or a federated identity scenario. And also some folks, customers, may have very strict policies on password hashes and just absolutely won't do that. So that will require federation to make those scenarios work. Now we mentioned Active Directory Federation Services, but we also have third-party capabilities enabled through this. So if we look at ADFS, that's the single way to make things work the fastest in an Active Directory environment. It is our recommended option for Active Directory-based customers, so if you've got AD locally. Once again, single sign-on, support for web and rich clients. It's Microsoft supported from end to end. That's a very important piece to understand. It does require on-premise servers, license and support. Once again, you can also host some of those servers in Azure instances and to reduce your local footprint as well. Office 365 supports third-party, what we call WS Star. The scenarios for this is where customers might be using non-ADFS identity systems with AD or non-AD, so you might have some other type of identity management provider locally, but they are a WS Star Federation enabled, and this is an option for you here. It does enable single sign-on. There is support for web and rich clients. Now, this is third-party supported, so what we mean by that is Microsoft supports the portion that is Microsoft's tools. The other tools in that scenario of the third party are supported by that third party, so that's very important to understand. We do verify those through the Works with Office 365 program, which you'll see in a few minutes. I'll be talking a little bit more about that. We have support for both SAML 1.1 and SAML 2.0. These are different authentication protocols that are enabled, very popular out there, and we have built that support in. So some of the things that to understand here is definitely for single sign-on. Once again, Microsoft is supported for integration only, no shibboleth deployment support. So when you're trying to do that enablement with the shibboleth side of it, we do not support that on our support processes. So SAML 2.0, the latest that's out there on that, we do support that for organizations that need that as well. Once again, through the Works with Office 365 program on this. So a little bit more about that program. What is it? It's actually a program where we actually do verification and testing along with the third parties that providing this federation interoperability. So you're seeing companies using Ping, Optimal, Centrify, CA Technologies, IBM, Radiant One, Tivoli. These are all examples of customers that have the ability for Active Directory with ADFS using WS Trust and WS Federation. We also have passive auth support for SAML through NetIQ and Shibboleth. I know that some of these partners are here today. You can talk to them about that as well in the hall downstairs. And once again, the important part for customer benefits here is really all about providing the best experience. Microsoft has qualified the solution. So we have tested it. We've worked with them. We work with them if there's issues. And there's coordinated support between the partner and Microsoft. So this is a program that we have that enables that capability much better. So we have some new identity features that are being enabled as we speak, and in both preview and also new features that are coming out as well. So one of the things that's happening right now is a little bit of a change on how our clients authenticate up to Office 365 and other solutions. This is based upon something called the Active Directory Application Authentication Library, ADAL, and these are a better way to support a lot more flexible authentication modes, such as multi-factor authentication, see on the screen. We know at Microsoft, if you're a Microsoft employee and you're authenticating from another machine outside of the network, could be your own home machine or something like that, we actually have multi-factor authentication. We enter our password, we enter our information, but then we also get a call back or a text from a system to do that multi-factor authentication. This also supports SAML-based identity providers, so once again, connecting back to those authentication support for the SAML systems, as we just mentioned as well. And also smart card insert authentication. This is very big in a lot of the government institutions as well, because a lot of times they don't have username passwords. So to provide better authentication mechanisms for the clients connecting to the service, the ADL-based authentication will actually take that smart card and certificate authentication. And then also on top of that, very important here, Outlook Doesn't need basic authentication at this point, which is great. So there is a public preview right now that's available. If you look at the link at the bottom of the page, aka.ms/blogadl preview. You can just get that from the slides later on. But that'll give you the details of how to join and actually be able to start testing authentication. You'll see more updates coming up. There's still some scenarios to fill in, like information rights management and a few of those pieces, but that's all coming. So good to start looking at that. Also, something just introduced is sign-in branding. This is included in all Office 365 SKUs. This was previously only available for Azure Active Directory Premium subscription. So in this feature, we now can take that initial sign-in page. Once you type in your domain name, davbrand@microsoft.com, we evaluate that and make sure that there's, if there is an actual branded login experience that's there for you, we actually send you to that proper experience. So with this, we're able to bring in custom colors, text, imagery, and just customize that for your users. So that's a good thing. That's available now for all Office 365 SKUs, which is good. Question? Password reset, does it work in a hybrid environment? Really, the password set right now that we have that's for Office 365 custom is for the cloud identities. So I'm not sure about the hybrid, how it comes in with the hybrid. Yeah, Azure AD Premium. Got it. But for normal, without Azure AD Premium, it's just supported for the cloud identities. And you must be the person that set me up for that. For the next slide. So cloud user self-service password reset. This is the important piece here. So once again, the very top line is the thing to understand. Cloud user. Self-service password is now included in all Office 365 SKUs. Allows the user who has forgotten their password to reset it, and based on prearranged alternative personal information. So you also see the CAPTCHA that they have to type in the text there as well. Previously available with Azure AD Premium, and once again, it is available for cloud users. And to answer your question there on that side, for user synchronize is on-premise using Azure AD Premium is the SKU there. So, does it work with DirSync? Well, once again, it's for cloud users only. So with DirSync, there's no password write back if you were coming backwards to local on-prem. So this is for cloud users. In Azure AD Premium, that supports there. AD Sync, AD Connect, not DirSync. Yep. Yes. The question was, is it able to upgrade from DirSync to AD Sync? You can actually implement them side by side if you needed to and bring them in. Awesome. Okay. There's a lot of questions about Azure AD and the different features that are enabled. Azure AD has got quite the bit amount of features out there that you can take advantage of, not only for your applications, third-party applications, but also for Office 365. So this slide is just to give you a little bit more information about what is enabled for Office 365 and the common features, and then premium and basic features, and then premium feature only. As you see on the right-hand side, you see the Office 365 components of that. So directory as a service, obviously that's what we use. There's that support. User and group management using UI or PowerShell, obviously. Access panel portal for single sign-on based users for software as a service and custom apps. up to 10 apps per user is included in that as well. I'm not going to read all these, but these are, one thing I do like is the standard security reports. I don't know if you've gone out to Azure AD and looked at the different security reports that we're enabling more features in that. There's a great Azure Active Directory blog out there that kind of tracks all the different reporting and authentication reporting that we do for Azure AD that we're starting to turn on. Some of those are being made for everybody using Office 365. There's still some other reports that are based for Azure AD Premium, but the ones for Office 365 are very strong. And so if you need a type of logging and reporting for Office 365, go out and take a look at those. So those are very good. So if we look at the premium only features down the bottom, you see some of the key ones that we have here. Multi-factor authentication service for cloud users, that's an important one for a premium feature. We see that a lot with customers. Looking at machine learning-based security reports, that's the advanced ones that I mentioned as well. So just a good feature to have here for looking at what is being provided in my Office 365 environment. Okay, so in summary, start simple. Always start simple. Even when Microsoft Consulting or other larger partners come into an environment, our advice is start simple. Find out what you need to get the customer running in Office 365. Start at that point and then build from there as you see that you need more services. Choose the simplest model for your needs. Change between the models as your needs change. As you saw, you have that capability. And then if there's no on-premise, use the cloud identity model. That's the way to go for. Synchronized identity model for most organizations. We see that, I'd say 80% of our customers, that is going to solve their enterprise needs for that. And then for those other scenarios, use your federated identity models for that as we go. Okay? Make sure you fill out an evaluation for this session, very important to us. Once again, my name is David Brandt. We'll take some questions up here at the podium as we go through. Andreas, do you want to join me up here, and Paul maybe, for some Q&A? Thank you.